Hey, everybody. Welcome back. I'm Nathan Cabrera, and this is the Trip Ups and Triumphs podcast, where we keep it real about setbacks, comebacks, and everything in between. Trip Ups and Triumphs is a podcast that keeps it real about the highs and lows in life, where we dive into comebacks, setbacks, celebrating wins. Either way, this show is here to remind you it's all a part of the journey. You will expect real stories, unfiltered insights, and a few laughs along the way. We got to keep it lighthearted once in a while, but tune in and get inspired to turn your trip ups and triumphs. Wow, that's a tongue twister. If you have to say my podcast multiple ways, multiple times. I'm using two cameras today. That's kind of like, you guys are like seeing all the other stuff if you're watching the video version. And hopefully, for those of you that aren't watching the video version, you're welcome. Super excited to be here tonight or today, whenever you're listening to this. Try to debut an episode every week and Wednesdays. So that's my go-to. Hump Day, Wednesdays. I'm going to try to stick to it, guys. Welcome to the family, the Trip Ups family, the Triumphs family. I don't know, whatever sticks. But so glad you're here. As you all know, we're going to get into nitty-gritty stuff as usual. Personally, with what I got going on or what I had going on, but not just me. We're going to be hearing from really amazing people that have gone through adversities, trials, obstacles, just a lot of junk, a lot of filth, but also talk about some inspiring ways how they've been able to manage those hang-ups or trip-ups or challenges and have made it through the world, made it through each day. Each day could provide some trip-ups and triumphs. So what is your current trip up? So if you are currently listening and you have the opportunity to do so, you can use the comments or chat box to share what trip ups you're currently facing. I'm going to be sharing about something very deep that I never have shared before. I know, I'm like, how is there always something that I've never shared before? But I got a lot of crap, y'all, but we all do. And some things are not meant for being shared or told, but if you find that that time is now or something to get off your chest, I encourage you to release that if it provides some sort of healing. That's basically what my motivation is surrounding all these situations that I've been sharing with you all for the last few weeks. And so I'm mostly unburdened by it because I've revealed so many things to a very close-knit of people. And if they accept me for those tragedies and those instances, you guys can too. And I can accept you. So I really want this to be a motivating time for you to just relax, dive into some deep conversations. We're going to have some laughs. We might have some tears. But at the end of the day, I want you feeling good. I want you feeling recharged. I want you to feel excited about the day that you have, that you are blessed with, that you get to experience today. Even in the little things, what are some of the little things that we can be grateful to have gratitude for? Is it a person? Is it a thing? Is it a job? And if you're not in that situation now, that's not your scenario, it is coming. It is around the corner, guaranteed. So what I like to do with opening segments is to have a little bit of fun with you all. So we tried something new last week. And so we are actually going to try something new this week. And so today I'm going to share some of the biggest pet peeves that I actually asked AI, plenty of resources out there for that. What are some pet peeves that people have? This one's actually inspired by a post that I saw that was hysterical. And to me, this is a huge pet peeve of mine. If you call me and then start talking to people in the back, so that kind of weird. My little country twang there, my Baltimore accent coming out. For those of you that don't know, I am from B-more, and we have like this hood country accent. So you will see my drawl coming out every so often. But yes, if you call me and then start talking to people in the background, what would you do? What would you do? Personally, I am hanging up. Like, honestly, I can't stand it. Like, being on the phone for a lot of people is already challenging enough. I think the younger generations after millennials and even some millennials already have some challenges with that because a lot of conversations can be accomplished through text. You're probably like, why do I even need to answer the phone right now anyway? But especially if you're coming to talk to me, you called me, or I'm really excited to tell you about something, and you got someone in the background trying to have a conversation, I am hanging up. And for those of you that truly know me and have had conversations on me, I don't even give you a warning. I'm just hanging up and going on because I'm probably doing something anyway. I'm probably watching reality television, trying to get my mind off of things. So that's that one. Number two, people who reply all to an email that didn't need a reply in the first place. This one is hysterical. I can't stand it. I feel like you don't know how to use email if you're doing this, especially when it's like there wasn't even a question being asked. It was just like an announcement, a comment, and then like your reply was like, "Hey, I got it. Okay, thank you." Like, this ain't a text chain. This is an email. And also, we do not need to see Cheryl's reply, okay? Becky, I'm laughing because I know some people with that name, but I swear I'm not calling you out. But yeah, don't hit the reply all. If you really want to reply to the person, just hit reply. I'm going to teach you something right now. Just hit reply, or make sure that it even calls for a reply. And then the last one I'll share, and for those of you that are back in the office or working with other people, microwaving fish or something really smelly at work, the comment or reply says straight to jail. So if you feel like that is a pet peeve of yours, or maybe you're the one that's causing that. I actually talked to a coworker literally today about this, like them feeling bad. Like, personally, if it's me making it, I ain't feeling bad. I want to eat my food. I was really excited. It was prepared. I probably either bought it or made it. And I'm super proud of it. I'm eating it. I'm going to let it reek. I'm going to let it stank. You're just going to have to deal with it for the next 10 minutes. But at least do some common courtesy, like air it out a little bit. Not like it's a fart, but just air it out. Just like, I don't know, open and close the microwave, wipe it down or something, but give the other folks a peace of mind, and then they won't complain about you when you're bringing that fish or curry that you brought to work. That's going to be delicious. But then again, your breath is probably going to be hot after that. But thank you for playing. We're going to get right into some things because I know we all have a big packed day today. Some of you might have a shorter commute than others, but I want to make sure that during this time, we get to hear some extra sauce. I was able to share some really vulnerable things with you all. This is the time now, the Trip Up segment right now. And during the Trip Up segment, this is where we get into the deep experiences of what people have endured. And I am going to do my best to share as much information about this part of my life without being revealing in a way that mishandles the situation, not because I have anything to hide, but because I don't know what the legalities are when there's an active case. I don't know. But yeah, this is something that stems from when I was in middle school. And I had already shared about some previous things that happened to me up until this point in my life. And that was when I was very young. So if you missed out on that, be sure to view the previous episodes where I mostly in order covered all of those things. You got to briefly hear a little bit about my upbringing with my mother and my grandmother, some abuse that I experienced in the past, and also the effects of having an absentee father. So I will be able to cover more of that stuff in the near future, but I wanted to kind of encapsulate some of that information so you get to know me sooner, know who your host is for Trip Ups and Triumphs, so that I can relate to you all more, or let you all know that I'm human too, but I'm still kicking it. I think I'm successful. I have a very fulfilling life, and I want to share with you that you too, despite your grieving, despite your experiences, your experience wasn't in vain. Your hardship wasn't in suffering alone, but that you actually can use those experiences for good, for humanity, for a greater purpose outside of yourself. Being a little older than adolescence, a preteen, a teenager at this point, I'm taking you back to the early to mid thousands. And so at this point in my life, I had been pretty much a caretaker of my siblings. I had 3 siblings that were in the household with me, and one was pretty much a baby. And at that point, I'd been quote unquote raising kids from the time I was really young to as a teenager. And a lot of times, that's the oldest child's responsibility. Most of the times you just get looped into doing that, especially when you're in a single parent family household. There's a little bit more of expectation that's tied to you. However, these are the other side of that is there's a heavy weight, a burden that is placed on the oldest sibling, especially if they're experiencing some traumatic events. And that is something that I was avidly enduring for years leading up. And so not only was I trying to deal with normal day-to-day things like school and hopefully toys and games and trying to make friendships last, keeping those together, I was trying to seek attention in school, but I was also coming home to feed the kids and occupy them while, parents or guardians had stepped out to work or do their own thing to take care of business. So I had not realized it until much later that I was developing some difficult feelings for just wanting to feel needed or wanted and cared for. Obviously, I had endured that past sexual abuse and experience at this point. So, kind of trying to move on from that, and then also experiencing puberty and, you know, expanded mind, thoughts, wanting to grow, but also still a child, right? The middle school ages are weird already. So, trying to maneuver that, but was super. I think we talk about like career a little bit more, life and individualism in middle school, kind of like coming into your own, and your horizons are expanded because most of your elementary schools in the area are more joint. So you're starting to see more people and developing more circles that might be more unique. Definitely still different than today because I feel like there's even more individualism now, circles and communities, small communities within schools that people identify with. But I consider myself as someone that was super friendly. I was in the nerdy classes. For some of you, are like, no shocker, but also might be surprised too, because I never really considered myself nerdy. I just was actively trying to get into the GT or high level courses because my friends were there, the ones that was growing up with. And it was also a motivator for me. I was really motivated by it. An achievement mindset. And I think that still exists now. And what's funny is how a lot of these mindsets overlap each other because of your past experiences. So if you really think about, how you are, how you behave, or how you respond now, I guarantee you it's from those core developmental moments in your life, 6 to 12, when you're becoming yourself and trying to be independent. Even at 3 years old, you're telling parents, no, because you want to pour your own drink. And we know how that is at 3 years old. You just make a huge mess. And then you have some of the parents that say, no, let me help you. Or no, let me do it for you. Or, oh, just let them figure it out. And then they make a mess and they're totally fine. I couldn't do that. But essentially, in my life at this point, I was really just trying to hold on and grasp to something. I wasn't getting the attention and affection at home. And up until this point, all the affection I ever knew was serving people. And then also, I did have other communities like in my church, my friendships in the neighborhood that I tried to keep. And at this point, I suffered some other experiences. We all, as we get older, our friends move and whatnot. So you have that little separation. But I look back and realize how those times were even more monumental. And those developments early on of anxiety and emotion would be triggered because I was used to losing people and having a lot of change. I remember as a kid moving around a lot. We moved from house to house. Thankfully, we always stayed in the same school. Somehow we always got permission to do that. I lost my father at this point. And so, and I was also used to a lot of different men being around and kind of like moving on because, those relationships didn't work out. But at this point, I'm in school, and I believe it was 6th grade and 7th grade, for sure. Those times, and definitely in the summer. But I had an interesting, healthy, and illegal relationship uh, with someone who was an adult, and that was a little bit different because, well, for one, like I said, it's illegal. It was someone that wielded power, and also it was a little different in the event that I was not dealing with a minor like I had in previous years, as those boys had more than likely been adults then either graduated high school. And I remember the school resource officer. And this is always so weird to kind of like look back because there's so much that every time I think about it or have to like talk about it again in private, I recall something else or I'm reminded of something else. And it's just like a really weird time. And like I mentioned prior, you tend to block out things. Your brain has a way of remembering things, but also protecting itself so that it doesn't just like go nutty. So you tend to like drown the noise and, forget. But that was the era of like chat rooms, AOL, AIM, was really making a turn for itself. And it was kind of like the millennials playground, it was like freely just, hey, be here. Instead of like go meeting at the park or meeting at the cul-de-sac, you were meeting in chat rooms. And for some people are like, wow, like that's something that we can do like all day, every day now. But it was pretty much no holds barred. Is that how you pronounce it? No holds barred? But there was no rules, there was no structure, and you know how people are when there is no structure. We're animalistic and just seeing how far things can go. But we always had like weird names. So if you do remember your AIM name or AOL, please comment about that as well. I'd love to hear some of these fabulous names because I'm just certain that they were very creative. I think one of mine was like, I am the best Nathan 13 or something like that, or 12. Ingenious. Very humble of me, I'm sure. Essentially, you would have conversations. One of the most interesting things as like a memory unlocked, because I'll see some of these memes trending now when referring back to these AIM rooms or chat rooms. And it's like ASL. Now the kids actually use ASL, shocker here, as hell. Like if you write ASL in text, it means as hell. I'm like, that's crazy as hell. But ASL back then was like age, sex, location. And because you didn't know who you were going in these chat rooms with, these could be private rooms or you could just join a bunch of other people in these rooms. Like, and then as you got later, these are from my early Gen Zers, you probably were playing Club Penguin. And by then, like chat rooms were not chat rooms. They were character and game rooms and somewhat regulated. But yeah, people would lie about that sort of thing. I did not, actually, as far as I know. For that, I'm not a liar. I always felt really bad about like being incorrect, even if it was like intentional. It was just what people did. But, at that time, you'd be like 11, 12, Baltimore or whatever. But me and my friends would just, I recall chatting with them all the time and making groups, and I don't even know what you did. You put smiley faces, the original emojis, and you would hear the cranking of the door in and out. But I recall one of my friends one day telling me that one of the school resource officers, if you don't know what a school resource officer is, I think, pretty much a lot of public schools at this point have them across the country in America. And essentially you have a police officer that is mandated and at a post for the school and kind of mitigate issues and help with disciplinary actions and help with the protections of the schools, especially as it relates to middle and high school, which again, if you're outside of the states, reflects 6th to 12th grade is middle to high school, primary school. So their intention, their value was important. They were intended to be stand-up people. They were supposed to share the DARE program. If you don't know what the DARE program is, I don't even know what it stands for, but it's kids don't do drugs. These different campaigns that would encourage kids to stand up and be against smoking and hard drugs. And I remember actually in 6th grade, the school resource officer coming to train those things. So I had already had an established rapport, if you will, as established that you would think, just knowing of the individual. But in the summer, I guess, or 6th grade summer year, I remember like students kind of like mentioning that this officer had been in one of the chat rooms or chats, like having a conversation. And I was like, wow, that is so cool. Like we can talk to people. Like it was like the coolest thing as a kid, like even seeing a teacher at a grocery store, if that even ever happened. But just off of school grounds, I know for me was like the most exciting thing, because I'm like, they have a life? Like they live outside of school? What? Like it was just amazing. Even to this day, when I see a coworker out in public or someone that I normally don't see, it is like bewildering. It's like, I'm in awe, I'm in shock. I'm always an excited guy. But yeah, so got super excited. And again, I'm thinking about my interactions with police up to this point. So I know my family has had run-ins with the law. At this point, obviously, my father is in prison, and I think in kind of like a snarky mindset, I look back and say, yeah, I'm looking to be surrounded by upstanding people and folks that are making something of themselves. So I just was like idling and just like, yeah, this is awesome. And I at one point or another connected with the gentleman and, had basic chats, and it became like a normal thing to like get home from school, or get online and be able to be on these chat rooms until it was time for bed, just hours either playing like video games and then going to the chat rooms, having that in the background, boom 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 boom. And at one point or another, I don't know the order. See, these are like bits and pieces, but the conversations start to get a little bit more personal. And really, it's not anything that crosses boundaries per se, but it was basically to get a makeup and a better understanding of who I was, kind of scoping and setting the tone or the pace, that grooming that takes place. And it definitely takes a very manipulative person, someone that premeditates and prowls on those that are vulnerable, low self-esteem. You're a target. Even something as what you would think is like simple, like not growing up with both parents. Just know that you are one step from normalcy, if you will. And obviously we don't have a meter for what normal is because no one's normal, but there's different things that kind of set you back or set you on a path for some more difficulty or challenges, less privilege, if you will. So yeah, and that also created why there was like a fascination with engaging in conversation and someone paying attention to me and wanting to have conversation with me and make time for me. So I'm getting all this attention, obviously from friends, but it's another thing when you're young and wanting attention of like a male figure that is successful and ambitious and wanting to associate with me. And so I also recall some other students mentioning times where they could and would have lunch instead of in the cafeteria. I remember the opportunity being available for me to have lunch in the officer's office that was very close to the cafeteria room in my middle school. And so again, not thinking anything of it, there's other students there. We're going together, or meeting them there. And, it's still technically a public setting, but again, having that communion or developing relationship, again, still nothing bizarre, right? It's just a kind gesture. And, nowadays, I mean, there's limits, regulations, even just like protocol or policies, especially like when I think about volunteering, because I've volunteered many times with kids, and kids are wanting affection, especially if they come from really difficult backgrounds. So I just know, like, from working with kids, that they want love. A lot of times they just are just loving, and there's no harm because their minds are so pure. They haven't been tainted and, affected by societal judgments and just the sad or evil ways that humans can fall into or be trapped into or want to poison others. And so I just think about like kids that just want a hug and like the appropriate way. Like if you don't know the appropriate way, it's the side hug, and or being in a place with kids where there's other adults, or in public settings where you're not alone, just to really decrease any opportunities for threats. It's protection for yourself, it's protection for them. So there's just so many other ways. And if you don't have a policy and you work with kids, develop one. Super important. Protect the kids and protect yourself, because you never want to be incriminated for things that are based off of assumption. But essentially, the communication continued with the officer on the chat rooms late at night. I don't remember, 9, 10, whatever. Where again, there probably should have been some limits to that. And so I remember different again. Nothing crazy, talking about like favorite songs or what do you do. And so at one point or another, the officer like learned about my religious background or like what I cared about. At that young age, again, I really gleamed to having a relationship with my church. and wanting to make that a part of my life and having a spiritual component because it was comforting and relaxing for me. And, I was able to develop friendships. So that actually was used against me. And at first was like talking about that he had been a Christian too, or like certain songs within the, religious faith, but also talked about other songs that were current. And, not that we're going to get into a debate or conversation about different styles or genres, but there's probably music that's appropriate for children and not appropriate. And there are a lot of times where kids are listening to inappropriate music just in nature, but not even knowing what they mean. And I'm not going to, or maybe I should, right? It's supposed to be unfiltered, right? I remember some different songs that he would mention that were very provocative or sexual. And even today, that's like not even by today's standards, is not like anything as crazy or bad as what distasteful that we hear now. But back then, it was one of the songs that I really remember that he mentioned he really liked was Goodies by Sierra, which, if you know that song, it's super catchy, but it ain't about candy. So again, now as an adult, like it could be questionable, but also was it necessary to, I'm always trying to give the benefit of the doubt. I shouldn't. I am a victim. And you guys are probably like, are you with me about like the levels of varying opinions, right? But that's what we can do. We can have opinions, we can talk about it. But I wouldn't want my child to be talking to a stranger, even if they are an officer at the school, talking to my child at night, 9, 10 o'clock about goodies. Just not appropriate. But it would be a lot of like that kind of crying and, slowly pushing innuendos and narratives. And it even got to a point where I met his friend who was his roommate, and his roommate had taken over on the keyboard and would have conversations with me as well. And there would be times where the officer would leave his keyboard, have to do an errand or go to the bathroom, step out, and the roommate would get online, and he was a little bit more open and flirtatious. And, one thing would lead to another as far as conversations, and ask me private questions, and was a little bit more revealing about themselves, and started to talk about their sexuality and their interest, particularly in men. And the friend had asked my opinions on it. And as a child, and as someone who is very open and receiving of others and caring, and also wanting to be accepted on top of it, I'm certain I said, it's okay. What about it? Not a big deal. And so that was an opening of a door to say, like, I would accept him. And there was times where the officer would come back onto the keyboard and take over, or there was times he was like, oh, I left my computer up, and Ryan, his friend, would mess with the officer, tickle him, or kind of like take over the keyboard, and they would, come back and forth, or say, and the officer would be like, hey, I'm sorry, that was Ryan again, every time that there was like an issue. And unfortunately, it turned out much later on that I realized that Ryan was not real, never existed, was not a roommate, and I was being manipulated and played. And unfortunately, that, I think, scars me a lot, because I felt so stupid for such a long time, and I would question my intelligence or my abilities, or wonder how I could be so naive, but yet I was 12 years old. And then you're also like, well, I was 12 years old, I would have known. You don't know until you're actually in that predicament. And again, you're using a new form of conversation. All the other things leading up to it had constructed who I was at that time. And that was a really low blow or tough pill to swallow once that was revealed to me, and that it was digested or embedded in my brain to essentially realize what was happening. But before that, between those, one thing led to another. I think that at that point, it allowed the officer to know where there could be an open door for a little bit more on the experimental scale. And there was the summer, and there was also the new school year. And I know I had essentially spent time with him between my years as a 12-year-old and 13-year-old. And I remember getting a birthday card. He didn't show to my birthday party, which I'm glad he didn't now, but he was just really swooning me over about, attention. He would pick me up from my house. My mom thought it was cool. I thought it was cool. I get to ride in a cop car. In school, he would use his patrol car, and we would go to the store. One time, at some point, I went to he would take me to Pizza Hut and different things to continue his ultimate plan. And again, some of the things are not innately problematic, but when you compile it all together, right? So there's no problems. I've taken students to Chick-fil-A or whatever, you do things out of the kindness of your heart, but the intention was not pure or right from the jump, from the get-go. And obviously there was the not so good things mixed with oh, these are the forward facing good things that people can see that I do and how I behave, but you compile them with all the negative ingredients, and that's a recipe for essentially disaster and problems. Really cruddy meal. But yeah, one point or another, I don't know how things escalated. This is where it gets, those parts got foggy, but I do remember at least 3 or 4 incidences that was definitely crossing the line of what is acceptable between an adult and a child. And I remember riding in his patrol car. And again, little disclaimer, if you are sensitive to these types of stories, or you're younger in age. I know I have a lot of viewers in varying ages from young and old. If you're under 18, I would ask you to ask your parents' permission to hear this content, not because I'm not using anything explicit as far as words, but just the stories that we share here can potentially be re-traumatizing, can affect you and open the doors for your own challenges. But yeah, there was touching and feeling of the officer where he asked proposition, engaged in a very promiscuous way for me to fondle him and engage in a sexual matter in his patrol car. And those nerves, those anxious feelings, and the uncomfortableness did come through my mind. It was the fast heartbeat and the holy crap, this is familiar, because right, I've been a victim before, but I didn't expect it from someone that I trusted, that I cared for, one where I actually wanted to engage in a relationship. At that point, it had been settled that this was something more, and it didn't stop because I didn't want the relationship to stop. He wanted other things to start, and the relationship became unpure. And to salvage the relationship, you do what is asked. And if you're watching current events right now, that there's a lot of polarizing commentary on a very big case right now of celebrity and their victims, and the victims still get a lot of flack, a lot of grief over being a victim, as if they chose, or why didn't they just leave, or this and that and the third. 100% you don't know. You can say that you would, but there's a reason a lot of people don't. So do not take that away from others. It's their experience, and no, not everyone that's a victim, especially if it's a repeated victim, asked for it, could leave. There's a reason, that they couldn't, because if it was that easy, I guarantee you they would. So yeah, there, I remember another incident too. Actually, I had a close friend at the time where she and I spent a lot of time together, obviously in school and even outside of school. And there was at one point or another where apparently the door in the officer's office was closed in her face, so that he and I could be alone, and it triggered red flags to her. But I do remember getting a kiss from him. And again, I think it was to just that continual reassurance for me, that reinitiating of his manipulation and process to continue to reel me in and keep me in, and reassure his position in my life and vice versa, that I was prioritized and cared for and whatnot. Yeah, the chats would still continue. I think I had gotten a phone, my first phone at the time. Still had to pay those minutes though, so internet was a cheaper way. And then I guess the big point was, I got invited back to his house. And Yeah, I don't even know how I had that opportunity, how I made that fly. I think there were a couple times prior to that that my mom kind of questioned, and one of her gang homies associates kind of like questioned me about it, and I was like, not rebellious, but kind of like defiant, like, how dare you, question him? He's a stand-up guy, an officer. You guys are criminals. And so understandably, I guess that was kind of the end of it. They asked me if there was a special interest or something going on, and I denied it and said no, there wasn't. And obviously, there was. And so yeah, I got it to the officer's house. He showered, which is a red flag. Some people are like, "Well, what's the big deal?" He showered and changed into mesh shorts, intentional. And we were supposed to be watching a movie, and as a kid, like you just had no problems napping. So I think I napped, and we woke up. We were on the couch, and we ended up on the floor. And then his crotch was actually in my face when I woke up, like super close. And I knew what that was about, why it was there. And what's crazy is when all this was said and done is, the defendants, attorneys, if you will, and their side was like, he was a promiscuous child. He had already engaged in other behaviors and was, essentially calling me like advanced and, trying to take someone down. And when he had no record or issues, and, this is just essentially someone trying to take someone down. And that obviously wasn't the case because I didn't even want it to go that far because one, it was exposure, and, I didn't want anybody to get in trouble. I just wanted things to be normal, whatever that was. And it's difficult when something like this is taking place. I'll save you some of the details because I don't think that everything needs to be said. But there was some playfulness, engagement in his house, running around and chasing, and you know, I think his father was living there too, and I was like, where the heck was he at? Did he? I mean, he knew because I met him that I was there. No one else was around, and I remember going up to the officer's bedroom and. Again, save the details for another day. But I had made the decision to say, like, hey, like, we should stop this. And he actually was an officer of a skating rink, security, as another part-time job where a lot of other kids hang around. Again, uh, why? It sort of makes sense because he's cleared and also has, the credentials, if you will, to work in that environment. But again, there was a motive. Essentially, I had some really awesome people in my corner. Running out of time, so I want to just kind of share with you all briefly some of the other outcomes. But I had some really awesome people that were in my corner that had my best interests at hand. Definitely my friend threw up some red flags, who also her mom had contacted still a very close friend of mine today, into getting a private investigation initiated, get this guy behind bars. And it did turn out that there were other victims. And I think that's what really hurt me because I realized, like most people are worried about like, hey, you were a victim when this happened, but it was also like very triggering just to know that I was not his only victim and that there was many. And when the reports had come out and this man was arrested, I made sure that I went right to school right away because I did not want a single soul to even think in my direction to take the scent off me completely. And so I made sure I showed up, and sure enough, a student met me in the courtyard. And I remember who the boy was, and he had asked me, hey, that happened to officer such and such. And he said, like, one victim had come forward. Was that you? Immediately denied it. Like, no, that was an eighth grader. Like, no. And what was interesting is I knew of at least two other boys who were older that had close relationships. And one of them, I think, stayed the night at his house. And another one had went with us to eat at the restaurant at one point. And, never crossed my mind that he was also using them. And I don't know to the extent. Never met any of the other victims. I actually just found out the name of one other victim literally a few months ago. And I revealed my own name, and I'm obviously revealing myself in this story. And there's some litigation happening more recently, and I'm not identified, and I'm identifying myself, but I'll keep that between us. Right? So much comes out of something like that experience. It's a whole nother level. It's a abuse of power, which is another challenge within itself. And for a long time, I felt bad. I felt sorry, even though I was the victim and he was not the victim. He is not the victim. But I felt really bad for a really long time because I made someone lose their career, their job, their identity, to their family, to the public. My name was safe. His was not. A victim feels sorry. A victim has that victim mentality of like, I sort of think like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said anything or said like what happened, and I didn't have to. And looking back, like, it hopefully saved someone else from some pain. And unfortunately, what helped me recognize that I did the right thing was that he came out and he did it again. Not with me. I actually found out by another friend many years later that he had an alias in a different state, working in an environment he should not have been allowed to, doing the same thing. And I feel for those kids because those kids' lives are forever changed. And it is incredibly difficult as a young boy who is longing for that attention and affection to be used, manipulated, taken advantage of, especially by someone who you trusted. And I hope that they are doing well today, wherever they are, that you can get through it. I'm sorry that happened to you. I wish things were different for you. I can't say that life is going to be perfect. No one's lives are, but it does get better. Healing is possible. You do get through it. It doesn't mean you get over it, but you will get through it. Yeah. So I just want to thank you all for listening to that trip up. I know now I'm at peace. Time lapse helps so much, but also doing the work, which, again, like I said, it encompasses that journey of healing. It's not just ignoring it. It's not just keeping it quiet. I'll share with you the effects of my childhood and trauma up to that point on a later episode. So I hope you all will stay tuned for that, because there's so much more to unpack and share with you all. I hope y'all aren't getting bored with me. I hope you are sticking with me and that your energy is positive and that you're excited. I do not want it to be a part of why your day is going bad and dreary, because I want you to know I am happy. I'm joyful and I'm really excited, and I am so gracious that you decided to include me as part of your day. Please, 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 if you don't mind, liking, following, if you haven't already followed the show, the Trip Ups and Triumphs podcast, but also just rating the episodes or rating the show as a whole and sharing it on your social platforms. Thankfully, this is not my full-time job, but I so appreciate it if just one more ear gets to listen and be impacted in such a positive and moving way. I want this to be a show where it's something so different than what we already are fed with, which is a lot of negativity, which is a lot of legalistic fiddle Nancy, which you guys, I'm probably going to use a new word each episode, but I just want everybody to leave away inspired and wanting to do something good in the world. And I know that doesn't always get the most attention, but I'd rather it be good and positive attention than having more attention that's negative. So I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Hoping that you tune into the next episode of Trip Ups and Triumphs, where we'll continue on sharing some more deets. And you stay tuned, because we do have some upcoming guests right around the corner that have some magnificent stories. And these are some really polarizing, what I'll call some characters as well. And I'm a character too. And once I get to unpacking, you'll really get to see all the joyful and crazy side of myself that everybody gets to see on a daily basis. So again, thank you for watching Trip Ups and Triumphs, where setbacks become your comebacks. So you all have a great day, and talk to you soon.